Hi, I'm John Byrne with Poets and Quants. Welcome to Fridays with Sandy. Sandy's
Hi.
back from a little
Kreisberg
vacation.
here.
Sandy happens to be in Boston, and we have a terrific applicant who's in LA right now. Her name is Annie. She works for a nonprofit organization called Food Forward, and we'll hear her describe what the firm does. She has a 720 GMAT, a 3.9 GPA from USC in anthropology and communications, and her number one target school is Berkeley Haas, but she will also be applying to Harvard and probably a few other schools. Welcome, Annie.
Hi, thank you guys.
So Sandy, what do you think?
What we got here is a summa cum laude 3.9, 720 with a very solid history in two no-name nonprofits, but most nonprofits are. So I believe that Annie will be, based on her deep, thick resume, her focus on nonprofits, the fact that she's real smart with a 3.9, 720 GMAT is probably below average for white women applying to, let's call it, well, Harvard and Wharton, let's consider those as, you know, reach schools or near reach schools. So she's an interesting case. I think because of the strength of the nonprofit work, she has a good chance. That really helps her stand out. So then the real explaining you got to do is your first job, which is at 826 LA. Mm-hmm. Tell us what that is and why you went there.
Sure. 826 LA is a youth writing and publishing organization. So we supported kids ages kindergarten through 12th grade on creative writing and basically storytelling, finding their voice through the written word. So it's the only organization I know of that is focused on publishing kids' work. And I actually started there as an intern. While I was in college, I had some PR internships that didn't really mean much to me. And I had done a lot of volunteer tutoring in high school. So I wanted to find an organization that was similar, started interning. I loved it. A role opened up in development. And I saw it as a way to make an impact.
You graduated from USC, which is a great school. You got a 3.9. How come you didn't work for McKinsey?
Honestly, I didn't really understand what consulting was all about at that time. I didn't really know it was an opportunity available to me. I didn't really understood what it meant. I think I didn't realize how exciting it could be now that I've learned more and figured out like what I've enjoyed at the organizations I've worked for and seen how I've liked to make an impact. McKinsey sounds fun, but I didn't really get it.
Okay, that's good. How did you get to 826 LA? Did they come or did you go laterally, or were you in this volunteer network and it was, you know, they eat what they, well, not what they kill. They only eat people who've already joined their dinner table.
It's a mix. I interned and I wasn't specifically supposed to be helping the development director, but she had a project that I thought was really cool. She was working on a peer-to-peer fundraiser that was a mini golf tournament and needed help like writing all of the fundraising communications. And I gave it a shot.
You got into it. So you're really a communications and fundraiser type. You're the type of person who does grant applications.
So I have written grant applications. Yeah. I am capable at it. It's not what is very fun for me.
No, but that's you'll never go hungry writing grant applications. Let me tell you.
That's what I hear. Yeah.
Annie is a natural do-gooder.
Yes, yes.
So she is, I think, motivated by trying to make the world a better place.
Right.
And if you look at her work history, that's what it clearly demonstrates.
There you go.
Yeah. And that's you need to say that as to
we should switch roles here. You're doing a great job. That's right. You hear that? That's the way you should.
Because that's plenty of justification for taking the jobs that you have.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to make a better place, and as far as my
Okay, let's just chat. Let's do a shakedown cruise here. Food forward. Pretend this is your Harvard, Stanford, or Wharton, or Berkeley Haas interview, and they said, "Huh? What's that?"
Okay, so I'll try to avoid the little log line I use that I'm now realizing is too opaque. So Food Forward takes surplus produce from people's backyards. No, I shouldn't start with that. Food Forward takes surplus produce at the wholesale pre-consumer level, and we redistribute it for free to hundreds of agencies across Southern California. We basically feed 2 million people every year with healthy surplus produce that would have otherwise been wasted.
Perfect.
Good. What? Who are your suppliers?
That's a great question. So we got started in a pretty grassroots way, literally picking fruit from the backyard citrus trees across Southern California. We also work
very close to grassroots, all right.
Yeah, pretty literally.
Yes.
And then we work at 24 different farmers markets. So on average, there might be 20, 30 farmers donating each week at each market. And then the vast majority—
farmers donate because it's too much trouble to schlep back, or
exactly,
get a tax deduction, or a little bit of both?
All of the above. So it's too much trouble to schlep back. They might not have another market for like 3 days. And especially in the peak of summer, like the peaches aren't gonna hold. It doesn't make any sense for them to bring it back. So we take it off their hands. They help others. They get a tax deduction. Meanwhile, the food pantry or the transitional living facility or whatever it is, they get fresh produce that they probably wouldn't have otherwise gotten, and then they get to spend that part of their budget on something else.
Great. Okay.
How about the efficiency of that and how it compares with others?
Sure. So the way that we've been able to really scale our impact the past couple years is with the advent of our wholesale recovery program. So Los Angeles is a center of produce distribution for the whole country. It's stuff coming from all around the world. There's enormous warehouses, and with that comes enormous waste that is just for purely logistical reasons or cosmetic imperfections. So that's truckloads and truckloads of stuff that we're getting every single day, millions of pounds per month. And because we're able to get such vast quantities and we have this incredible network of agencies and basically relationship building and maintenance, we're able to move lots of produce really fast.
Okay, let me.
So yeah.
Why you want? What job do you want after business school? What would your first job be, or what would be a good summer job?
So as I've been working the past couple of years, I'm realizing that what's really lit my fire is forming strategic partnerships with for-profit companies that also want to have an impact. But through that process, I've found that there's like a pretty big
career space.
Yes. I'll put a pin in that. There's a pretty big disconnect between our sectors as far as like creating partnerships that are actually authentic and impactful, which I think is increasingly really important as consumers are looking for companies that have that responsibility, but are also seeing through those that are just giving lip service. So I want to get an MBA so that I can bridge that communication and skills gap between the sectors. The dream job right now would be to consult for a mission-driven consulting company like Bridgespan or FSG, but I know that those jobs are pretty few and far between, and also tend to look for people with a consulting background, which I don't have. So I think the most logical—
Do you agree with that?
Do I agree with that?
Yeah,
those are hard jobs to get because so many people want them. However,
tell Annie what's new in the yuppie duppy world of careerism from people at elite business schools.
Well, I mean, sustainability and corporate responsibility are a big deal, and a lot of companies have those departments. And to Annie's point, I think in a lot of cases, those are superficial efforts to gain goodwill from consumers.
Get the superficial stuff out of there. Stay on message. That's a footnote.
Yes, and I do think that would be a really amazing.
Let me just state my point.
Yeah.
working for a consulting company used to be the best job you could get out of business school. That is no longer the case. What many high flyers at Harvard, Stanford, and Wharton want to do is start a company, work for a startup, or work in private equity or some finance-based thing. So the impact of that for you, since of course you don't want to do that, being the person with the values and the focus and the mission-driven DNA, that's good news for you. Okay, if you got into Wharton, Harvard, or Berkeley, Haas, I don't think you'd have a hard time getting a job at a big consult. I don't think you'd have a hard. You're a McKinsey kind of person. John is going to explain why, so I don't say something incendiary. But you're a McKinsey type of person, and you're also someone who gets good grades, and you will get good grade. You know, you've got real Sitzfleisch. John will translate that from the Yiddish.
Please do.
Sitzfleisch means someone who can, I may not be pronouncing it right. It means someone who can sit in a chair a lot.
Okay, yep. And absorb information and give it to you back.
Yeah, right, yes. That's the 3 pillars of business school. Sit still.
But you know, she doesn't want to merely work for consulting firms. She wants to work for a mission-driven consulting firm like a Bridgespan, and it is hard to get in there. However, you know, you work for a consulting firm for 2 or 3 years and get that on your resume and get the experience of that.
Yeah.
And then you leverage that experience into anything you want in the world, really.
Totally.
Yeah, that would be my suggestion.
So
yeah.
I'd really
that's why
like
you should go to business school. You see, business school can put you in that network.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, John.
What are her odds? What are her odds at Berkeley? Now you got to remember that Berkeley's acceptance rate is only 12%.
And it's tiny.
Yeah, because it's the smallest of all the incoming classes of the best schools. The incoming class is just under 300. They're going to expand the class to just a little over 300, but they get over 4,100 applications a year for those 300 spots.
Yeah. Your odds at Berkeley should be like 50%. You have to convince them you want to go there.
Annie, Sandy loves you because the highest percent he will ever give anyone is 50%.
Hey, that's
on
great.
any school.
Well, that's what I use for Harvard, because that's the number of people who flunk the interview. So I don't care who you are. You can flunk the interview.
Yeah, but you got to get the interview.
Right. Okay. So for Berkeley, what you should do is lobby them and tell them, you know, if you can, network, say you really want to go there, you're committed to California, because of your backyard recovery program, you know, you are connected to the land and the backyards of California, okay? At places like, let's take HBS, boy, I think they'd go for this. You're unusual. This is
very
unusual stuff.
Totally.
It's terrific. If you could present it in a more edible way. This is the raw and the cooked. You're the raw here. You gotta, if you know that one, you got to become the cook.
I need to be the cooked. Yeah.
Yeah, right. You understand that? Yes.
Yeah, and you're outside the typical pile. You know, there's a pile up of consultants and bankers and people from the tech industry.
Another pile you're outside of. Forgive my language. You're not a shithead do-gooder, okay?
No, and here's what people can't see. Here's what people can't see. They can't see her resume, which has a lot of concrete accomplishments associated with money. So the income generating partnerships that she forged with Whole Foods and with the LA Times and the actual results of that partnership.
Right. And you
that's really solid.
Hey, SUMA goes a long way.
So you should, what are the odds at Harvard, would you say?
Yeah, I think your odds of getting an interview with a serviceable application are 50%. And then the question is, would you wash out of the interview? Okay.
Right.
I don't think so. She's articulate. She's thoughtful. She comes across as sincere, very likable.
Yeah. Do me a favor. If you get an interview at Harvard, hire me for a mock interview.
Okay. Deal.
You have to, in terms of an interview, you've got to give more bang, bang, bang answers.
Concise answers that are
You're
very
a
direct.
gusher, like I'm not the first person who's told you that, Andy. You've got a gushing personality. It's very winning. It's very positive. One of the few situations where being a gusher is not good is at a Harvard interview.
Okay, good to know.
Okay, and then we think you should apply to Yale.
Yeah.
And we think you should apply to Kellogg, right?
Yeah, you should investigate those places.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah.
Yale has a lot of people like you who apply, but you're somewhat different because you're from the West Coast and you're in a really interesting kind of nonprofit where you have a chief.
Part of the nonprofit stuff.
Yep. And you'll find a lot of like-minded.
Not a do-gooder dummy. I'll
Yale.
change my vocabulary.
That's actually my one reservation with Yale, is because despite the fact that it's obviously a really prestigious program in general, well, I don't know, I probably shouldn't say anything about this publicly.
Okay, then don't. But the question that you should be asking yourself at any business school, aside from, do I like these people? Am I getting a good feeling? Is, can I get a job at McKinsey out of this place?
Right, that sort of changed my school exploration strategy a little bit. Is before it was like, okay, I got to be with people who, understand nonprofits, understand social impact.
Everybody does that.
Everybody does there. And also now that I'm realizing that a good step post B school is consulting. I mean,
well, I'm just saying that as, that would be you've never worked for a international organization. It really helps.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a real, brand name. You've never worked for a brand name organization.
Yeah, I need one of them.
That's a good thing to have on your resume, no matter what happens. Okay.
Definitely.
There may come a time where you could be considered for 15 years from now, you could be considered for the CEO of some really powerful nonprofit, and your competition might be somebody with McKinsey experience. That could tip it, man.
Mm-hmm.
It really could.
Yeah, it would.
Well, both of these people are great. They're both dedicated. This other person, people think something magical happens at McKinsey. This other person knows all these other McKinsey people. Right.
That's
okay,
true.
John.
Well, Andy, we really like you.
You're great.
Think you're going to do really well in this process. And I like the fact that you've been thinking about it for a while, and you're applying with a great strength. So good luck to you.
Thank you both so much. I so appreciate it.
And thanks for participating in this. Thank you, Sandy in Boston, for yet another Fridays with Sandy.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
And thanks, everyone, for listening and watching. This is John Byrne with Poets and Quants. Tune in next Friday for our next episode.
Great. Thanks a lot, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thanks.